Hey guys, welcome to the Front Lounge, episode 35. I'm Johnny Congus, platinum certified, very colorful.
How's anyone going to tell what episode it is if you wear the same thing every time?
They got to pay attention. That's why I say it off the bat. Dylan's here. Danny's here. Jesse's not going to join this one, but
Have you told them that you have 365 of these and you throw them out after each
Yeah.
use?
our manager used to do that. You'd joke about that, but remember, Mark, he would, not 365 of any shirt, but he went to a festival once, and because it was a little dirty, threw all his clothes away at the end, like before he flew back from Denver or wherever we were back to LA. He didn't want to deal with washing them, so he just left them in the rental car. Just like,
You know what? If they're stinky enough and you got to carry that in your luggage on the plane, and it depends. I mean, I don't have any clothes that are expensive.
yeah,
The worst thing is wet, if they're slightly wet and you got to
get wet,
travel
yeah.
for a few days or something like that. Then it's like that could permeate the entire traveling party.
yeah, these were brand new, completely clean. Speaking of brand new clothes, Dylan had a little party at Songland Farms yesterday with a bunch of friends and then like new people that we've been meeting around. And I won't say their names, but two of your friends, did you notice they were in all Vuori clothing? Did they talk to you about that?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone else has seen this. I'm being fucking bombarded by ads for Vuori clothing.
I think they did a shoot for them. They did a
Right, yeah,
partnership.
They kind of do that, but they are on full steam ahead, that clothing brand, because you can't escape them. At TikTok, Instagram, everywhere I go, they're just hitting it. I got a mailer from them. I don't even know where they would have got. There's obviously someone is buying and selling addresses, but
Maybe they see your fucking outfit and they're like, he's receptive to anything.
It's clearly like when companies hit a critical mass or they hit a certain point of being noticed or something like that on social media, they really start pumping the money behind advertisements. Because I had never heard of it, and then maybe a week ago I saw an ad for it, and then they showed up wearing them.
It's working.
Maybe it's like a blitz. It's like rather than spreading out advertising,
I think
they
it
just
works.
do it all at once. Yeah.
It's definitely working.
But their budget must be millions and millions, the amount I'm seeing it, you know? Unless they're just spending like $50 at me
Right.
specifically. I wanted to talk today about the World Cup because who's left? Morocco, France, Croatia, and Argentina.
Yeah.
Who have you guys got? Who do
Who do I
want?
support?
Yeah.
Morocco.
Morocco?
Yeah.
I haven't been watching any of it.
I mean, I just support any African team,
Yeah.
basically. And especially over the fucking French.
I would have liked to have seen America go further. We just
yeah.
nice to see America go well. After they're out, we supported the English. We had an English friend. We went to his house.
Not really,
over
though.
France. Over France.
Yeah.
I don't know why I've just turned on France. I'm not crazy about.
I sent Sam a clip because of what's the guy's name who missed the penalty. Always you feel really bad for same as
Roberto
Baggio, yeah, in '96 or whatever that was. But I sent Sam a clip of this lady just getting pummeled in the face by a penalty kick from the stands, and I said, "Well, the stands' view of that penalty is nuts."
I haven't watched a single game. I've barely even seen highlights. How do you watch it on Twitter? Every time I go there, there's only highlights. Is there some other?
I thought they were streaming all
I think
the
they may
games
have
live.
done. No, I think they did like one or something like that.
Oh, okay. Because Elon Musk kept
We
on.
should watch the final somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Say my name friend on the chat says they're going for Argentina because the world would run better, and that is it.
I mean, so it's France, Morocco, Argentina,
Croatia.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think France they're probably going to win, but they're my least supported out of the remaining. Argentina had good times there.
We supported France, and whenever the last one, well, not last, it was a while ago. Remember when Zidane headbutted the Italian guy because he insulted his mom or something?
Yeah, that was
in the
cool.
chest.
Yeah, in the chest. I supported that because the Italians were being little, like, flopping on the ground bitches, you know?
I kind of now that they're never gonna do anything about diving. Apparently, I'm on the Italian side. They're like, well, if you're gonna allow this, we're gonna
just use it
we're
as a
gonna be
tool.
drama queens about
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
That's the kind of player you think about.
I agree with that. It'd be cool I mean, Croatia would be awesome. Morocco would be awesome, you know, for Africa to get a World Cup. Croatia, it'd be cool for Croatia to get some, Croatia, France if they won. That'd be cool.
Why?
Because France beat Croatia in the last one.
Oh, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they did.
Forgot what I was saying.
There's no feeling like the World Cup. It's the only thing that feels like Quidditch. You know, it's like the whole world's watching this thing and everyone's dressed in their little outfits, and it's like it feels like something from a different era to me. Well,
Yeah, when they show the videos of people watching in the various cities supporting their teams, you realize how giant of an event it is.
Yeah.
It supersedes anything.
right.
America, like Super Bowl and that sort of thing.
And it's also one sport. It's not like the Olympics where people are like, "Well, I caught the 200-meter fly, but I didn't catch shot put." You know.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to chat about last week, but I forgot about, is there's a podcaster named Lex Friedman. I think he's fairly interesting and also boring. Kind of it vacillates, I'm sure, like us. But he's obviously a huge podcaster, got tons of guests. But I was trying to see if there's ever been a podcast of his where he has not used the term "steel man," to steel man an argument.
I don't
and
even
I feel
know
like
what that means.
to steel man argument is to build up your opponent's argument in a strong way to aid your case. I feel like I've looked it up. I'm not entirely clear. It's the opposite of a straw man.
As opposed to straw man, yeah.
Right. So it's not even about the meaning of that term. It's just that certain things, certain phrases become very popular and get things like. Do you remember when?
Oh,
Well, the best way to
tactics.
steel man your adversary's argument is to agree with it. Like
Right.
that's proper steel manning. Like, nope, you're right. There, you steel manned his argument.
one of my least favorite, and by least favorite I mean I fucking hate it, is unpack. Let's unpack that. Could you unpack that for me? I mean,
It's what you do with Amazon boxes.
yeah, it's like this a little idea you can
I'm
just
just
take
going
out
to
of a
push
box.
back on that a little, and that's I hate that one.
No, the notion that you would push back on me unpacking my steel man argument is just.
There's a couple of those. Do you remember when the optics on this? I feel like this was like it was after 9/11.
Right,
all
yeah.
the defense people started saying the optics, the optics, the optics.
Yeah, there was also the narrative that's emerging. That's another one.
the narrative that's emerging.
Yeah.
Yeah, Obama used to use the notion. The
notion,
notion that you would the notion.
Right. Notion levels are rising. It is weird. It's like a linguistic fashion.
Yeah, the unpack thing is when like Sam Harris used to use it a lot, and it's like
annoying.
what annoys me the most is like he would use it. Everyone uses it in all situations. So unpack, it's fine if you're like unpack this political thing. Now use it like unpack your meditation experience for me. What?
But it was also just like, just keep talking about the thing. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm just thinking out. It's a bit like thinking out loud. You mean talking? If you listen to olden days phrases, let's send that up the flagpole and see if anyone salutes.
Yeah.
They sound so good. They sound like slapstick language now, and people might realize that all of these kind of fashionable phrases will sound so goofy in the future.
Yeah. Let's go to a bit of news.
News, events, important, gossip, stories, terrifying, concerning. This is the news.
This is the news. This is the news.
This is the news.
Before you address that, I agree with Say My Name Friend, saying debate in itself is so incredibly annoying. I'd like to end this debate by agreeing with that.
Yeah, you're gonna steel man his.
I'm going to steel man your argument and just say I agree.
This has been. I think this is quite a big announcement, and it seems like a real one. They've made quite a breakthrough on fusion in terms of energy source. It's still, from what I was reading in the article, they only were able to achieve it for like 5 seconds. It says here they were near Oxford.
Hey, what is this about?
The idea, as I understand, again, this is not, we're not in any way understand this properly, but they're trying to create energy above what I believe the metric of 1, and 1 is where you're creating more than you're using to
Initiate the reaction.
initiate the reaction. So that's been a massive challenge. They've done it before, and it's been for microseconds. They've now achieved it, I guess they're saying, for 5 seconds, which, you know, eventually they will figure it out, and it's going to be such a game changer. But when that happens, obviously, is going to be the real question, because this could be 10 years from now, or it could be 150 years from now sort of problem.
Yeah.
Just thought that was kind of interesting, because so much of our debate right now in terms of like what's going on in the world and energy crisis, and, you know, there's always the chance that new technology, this is what's always driven things. You know, things look bad right now in terms of the typical kind of opinion on fossil fuels and all that. But it's not like people aren't constantly trying to find new and better energy solutions. And it brings up basically, this is the problem, always, is this material problem of energy, fuel, at this literal level. Like, how do we fuel humanity? How do you fuel a decision? How do you fuel putting an album out? Like, everything requires some interchange of energy, and it plays out at every scale of human life. And it's interesting to see the scales. And I don't know if a lot of people necessarily apply that down the chain of existence, down to like literally every decision or thing you make requires some expenditure of energy. And where does that energy come from?
Well, there was that movie with Justin Timberlake. I think it may have been a Philip K. Dick idea. The movie was not very good, but the idea was pretty interesting. It's basically like envisioning, well, what if resources became truly not scarce, and they artificially used time as scarcity by putting a little death watch on people or something like that. So, it's countdown.
I remember that movie,
and then time was the currency and all that kind of stuff. Because if energy in our lifetime was solved to the point where it's completely abundant, to the point where you can't even make money from it, something would replace the scarcity. Something else would be the scarcity around which activity revolved.
Right. Well, it also would bring up the question then, what is energy? Because if you're saying we solved all external energy problems, we still have the question of what is life? Like, what is the primordial energy? And inevitably, people would still find scarcity somewhere. Yeah. And it's a interesting thought.
It does seem like it's all towards basically creating more time for people, more free time, whatever that means. Because otherwise, what's the point of constantly pursuing efficiency? Like, basically everything just gets more and more efficient, but for what purpose? For creating more free time to create more efficient machines for more free time for more efficient machines. Yeah, it's almost like if you didn't think of it that way, then you've solved the energy problem for yourself. If if you weren't constantly trying to find more free time.
Yeah, if you weren't constantly trying to be doing something else, you mean?
Yeah.
That Jacob Needleman talks a lot about that.
Who?
Needleman. Jacob. San Francisco philosopher head, I think, whatever that university is there. He just died, and he's got. He talks about despite time-saving devices just proliferating, the sense of time slipping away is increasing. Yeah, and that's related, and that the disappearing of time is related to your loss of sense of self, or the loss of like remembering who you are in that time, which I feel lately, because we've been in this transition period. I've had quite a lot of free time, or at least time, kind of like undirected time, without touring or without specific things to do, but it feels like time is just fucking accelerating at a pace that I've never experienced.
Well, I always say this now, like every parent always says to people that are about to become parents that, oh man, they grow up so fast, like all those cliches you always hear, and they were not fucking lying.
Yeah.
Like it's not one of those things that people are exaggerating. It truly is, like, it just goes by, and it's quite a sad feel. Not sad. Sad's the wrong word, but it really makes you just think, where was I? My daughter's now going to be almost 2 in March. Mm-hmm. Like, where was I for those 2 years? You know, there's so much of it I have no recollection of. Obviously, you know, there's the practicalities if you're just like involved in like raising a new baby. There's a lot of busyness to it, but it really just makes you realize you're not there most of the time, and that's the real problem with time, is that you're not there. It's running over you.
Yeah, I've had like the opposite. I've had basically no free time, but nothing's different about that than having free time, because even with how busy I've been, I'm still finding myself trying to finish one thing to get started on the next thing. And that's why we've talked about it before. I like the Amish. You I don't know if you've researched it. You told me about it, that the Amish, one of the principles of technology that they use is that it has to make things better.
Not
It can't
just-
just
right.
make it faster or
Right,
more
right.
efficient. It actually has to make it better. So they use certain technologies, like sometimes they use a sawmill. If the cut is a lot better, then they can do it by hand and things like that. And that really, when I unpack that resonate that resonates, because it's this efficiency thing that is like, it's driving me a little bit insane when I think about it on the farm. I'm constantly going for efficiency, but then it's and there's a certain level of it I have to get to. I can't just be like tripping over my own feet trying to finish a task. But beyond that, what's the point? What's the point of giving myself more time so that I could get to doing the next thing that I'm, that is inevitably just going to be continuous throughout my life. I'm like always going to have to change the toilet paper roll or something, whatever.
I go for freshwater fish over efficiency.
What's that?
I go for the freshwater fish over the efficiency.
It is a. I think it's a little bit like that wealth question they have, where they say there is a point beyond which wealth does not improve quality of life. Obviously, there's a point below which it does help you. You can argue about that number.
It's something like 90,000 in the
but
Western world. It's like $90,000 a year.
Conceptually, I think we can all agree that basically makes sense. There's a certain point where you have satisfied all of the things that humans have struggled with in the past, like literally living, not dying from disease, those sorts of things. And we're definitely in the period right now where we've done enough, other than, I guess you could make the argument like we can't stop an asteroid yet. And that's a real existential, practical problem, perhaps, that we need to be happy that scientists are exploring. But it does seem like this never-ending race to an ambiguous end to try and improve things that serve no real purpose. And it's inevitable. I'm not arguing against it. That's what's going to happen. But as an individual, sometimes you just step back and go like, I don't need any more of anything. Like there's nothing I need more of.
Also, just from an actual like empirical standpoint, looking at it now, I saw a statistic that longevity in America now is at the levels of 1996. So for the past,
It's regressing.
yeah. So for the past 25 years or whatever that is, 25, whatever. Do the math. Obviously, I'm not on that team of creating fusion. Longevity has regressed, and so all this improvement, all this technological improvement, this medical improvement, everything that's been happening over the last 30 years has actually led to unhealthier people that are dying sooner.
Right.
So, like, what was actually the point of it? Obviously, if it's used well and if it's used properly, then it does have a positive effect. But overall, right now, it's created a 300 million person country, which is dying sooner.
Yeah.
And with less quality of life.
If you pull out a couple key advancements like in surgery, antibiotics, like basic
It's a
things.
worse picture. Yeah.
Yeah, those things clearly improved life expectancy, and there's a lot of it that didn't.
That's what makes the life expectancy decreasing quite scary, because if like the population is getting the quality of life and the health span or whatever the word they use now is going down despite improvements in surgery, infant mortality, all of the things which have historically raised.
Yeah.
Right.
That means that the actual, like, the quality of daily life has gotten so bad.
Yeah.
Because most of longevity was due to infant mortality, disease, surgeries, all that stuff. So now that stuff is relatively refined. Now you're at a point where your daily existence is so bad that that's creating stress, pollution, food, all that stuff is creating people to
How old
leading
was,
to people
like
live
Ben
long, less
Franklin
long.
was like in his 80s, right? When he died of syphilis. Pretty good run.
That guy fucks.
Yeah.
Let's do a little more news. So, I guess there's been a collective of doctors and lawyers for 100 years in America, at least, that have debated and helped influence public policy on what death means. In terms of, they define it in two ways now, which is one, brain death, where the brain no longer is putting out signal, and then heart or lung failure. Now, obviously, you can have brain death, and with machines, they can keep heart and lungs going. And that's obviously been a debate that is not just a practical debate, it gets into the realm of religious and belief debate because people have got different ideas about what that is due. So I guess they're reconvening now just because, as always, as technology advances, you have to readdress what alive means because there was a time where obviously you couldn't keep someone alive without heart or lung function, or without brain function.
I think if you watch Office reruns, I think you're technically dead.
American Office particularly, but both.
Well, that number, just like the number of how long modern humans have been around in the Americas or whatever, keeps getting pushed back significantly.
Right.
It's, not too long ago, I don't know the numbers, but not too long ago, it was thought that like your brain being inactive for a number of minutes is a sign of death. Now it's been pushed to 15, 20 minutes, sometimes like 30 minutes, I think. Don't quote me on the actual numbers, but it's
Isn't it
insanely
like
long period of time.
cold, like people who get fall in ice and all that kind of stuff, it helps, I think, slow down the...
And it's not like it's not a guarantee. It's probably the opposite. But many people have come back from like prolonged brain death to have brain damage.
Here's specifically in the article, it's bringing up the fact that researchers at Neuroscience Lab at Yale University reported earlier this year that they had devised an experimental system that restored function to the heart, lungs, and brains of pigs that had been dead for an hour. Yeah. So if we just follow this where it's inevitably going to go, they're going to get better and better and better at it. And we have to keep addressing what life means. And I think ultimately, this has to go into the domain of not religion, because I know people hate that word, but it has to go beyond like what do we physically define as life. It's more complicated, clearly.
Well, that but then there's the practical shit, like without brain death the organ transplant system goes away, so then it's like
we have
what
to
cost
call it,
are you keeping someone alive?
You got to call it at some point.
I think this is all propaganda to eventually get us onto the midsummer system of jumping off a cliff when you're 72.
Yeah, that's what I saw a clip of Billy G talking about the cost-benefit analysis of having people live and being what's it called?
Productive.
Sorry?
Was it?
Productive. He was weighing the costs of like having to weigh off 100 teachers or something like that. A country having to make the decision between laying off 100 teachers and their salaries versus keeping an 85-year-old on life support. And like, so if you just look at it as some one-to-one, that makes a certain amount of sense, but it's fucking insane because that's not the dilemma that they're being left with. The dilemma is not laying off 100 teachers and letting this person live and seeing if you can continue their life or their quality of life. It's $1 trillion on needless wars or $100 million on a single weapon versus keeping your teachers paid.
Well, I think a lot of times that kind of false dilemma, false dichotomy, and I would call it like bad economics. It comes from a fatalistic view that nothing can be changed about that kind of thing, about $1 trillion wars, that kind of stuff is inevitable, which they may be right.
Yeah.
So, but that's like, isn't that the more interesting thing to talk about? That you're so fatalistic about the ability to change these highly wasteful, negative things that you're now creating a dichotomy between whether or not you should keep an 85-year-old alive or fund education. Like it's just a non-thought.
Because you cannot talk about the defense budget.
Right.
You just no. That's going to be in the tens of trillions of dollars. Like
that has to be.
They just got audited for like the third time or something like that, and
I
they
think it was fifth time.
and they can't account for something like $3
Maybe it's
trillion.
because they really. I mean, what would make sense to me is that that's by design. Like the SR-71, that whatever that plane was that was hidden for 50 years. That costs a lot of money to hide cool shit.
Yeah, that's an element of it. It's like it is actual national security that they're trying to keep some of their technology or where the money's being spent hidden, but it doesn't account for all of it. It's going I don't know. It's not here.
What I wonder is like if the fighter pilots who see the UFOs, they come back down and they're like, dude, I saw a UFO, and the other people, they're like having to pretend that they weren't the ones flying it. That's crazy, dude. Well, how would it look like?
Yeah. I mean, I what I find interesting about that article, though, is regardless of kind of a bigger philosophical viewpoint on the debates around death, is like in a society you have to have that discussion. Like
The cost of death or the cost of
no, I
keeping
mean like
something alive?
literally death. You can't just lie as a purely philosophical or religious debate, because you have to decide within a community, like when can you bury someone? Like lawyers have to get involved. As much as everyone hates lawyers, you have to have a legal discussion about what the boundaries of these absolutely unanswerable questions are. We have to get together and say, okay, well, we don't fucking know, but for 2022, death means X, Y, and Z in terms of brain death or whatever it is. Otherwise, how do you determine, like, inevitably, even just from a practical standpoint, you'd have people suing each other, or you'd have
Right.
people saying, oh, he was dead, and be like, no, he wasn't dead.
Well, what's weird to me is that they come up with a new fucking tax, every minute, and a new thing to make people, like a new fucking mountain of paperwork to do every year, so they can collect their fucking bullshit, so that they can go bomb someone in Syria. But they can't, like, it would be interesting if a community insisted upon addressing your own death ahead of time.
Yeah.
So it's like there's all sorts of legal requirements, but if you at the point where you're an invalid or you're brain dead or whatever, now you're placing a huge burden on other people to make a very bizarre decision.
Well, so what you're saying is like a mandatory do not resuscitate decision.
or either or basically some. I mean, I'm it's probably not very practical, but it would force people to think about their own death. And like I was thinking about our grandma who planned her funeral like 30 years in advance or something like that. She bought, and I was like, it's kind of insane, but at the same time, it's pretty fucking considerate, to kind of deal with your own life even after you're not around.
That show 6 Feet Under kind of deals with that, because it's about a family of undertakers and just the practicalities of death that a lot of people don't think about. But there was a generation that did, and it was much more dispassionate about, like, okay, look, we're all going to die. Let's just sort out a couple basic things, like where am I going? Where's my grave plot and everything?
There's a recent story, a Canadian guy had an accident and couldn't pay his the medical bills, and he was going to lose his house, so he applied for euthanasia. He ended up getting a GoFundMe that paid for his bills, but that is insane. I think there's actually some, because it's really in the ether right now, talking about euthanasia for older people, and Canada's at the forefront of it right now. But it's a bit insane. It's again, getting back to it, no one can talk about the actual costs just being spent on defense budgets and all sorts of fat that's basically not being cut, and they're always having this moral dilemma between two things, a false moral dilemma. Teachers and the children versus medical bills, basically healthcare.
That kind of anti-human people who think humans are just a blight on Earth.
Yeah.
And that we should work towards eliminating ourselves. Like, there are people who literally believe that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, first of all, you could do that yourself right now.
Yeah. Hey, that's my quote. If you're for world depopulation, you start with yourself.
I think a lot of people have
but
made
it's
that
also
point.
it's kind of like, aren't you setting up, aren't you putting out into the ether what you are gonna achieve? Isn't that fatalistic, like misanthropy? Isn't it gonna change the nature of what you work on and what you do with your life and all of that kind of stuff? If you have zero optimism about the potential of the human race, then it's going to change your entire orientation and what you work on and what you
We've talked about this before, and I always forget who the guy is that addresses this very issue, is that so much of the climate change debate now is being fueled by depressed people. I'm not saying that to make fun of them. I'm not saying it's not a real thing, but it's like this outward expression of inner nihilism, and where you've reached a point of feeling like that you're hopeless, and then you're now saying this is what the universe and what Earth and what humans look like, and it's not a healthy position from which to tackle how do we as a species go forward, improve things, because it's like literally just like someone who's like, fuck this, everything sucks, let's make that policy, and it's not, that cannot be the basis for where real big decisions and hopeful movements begin.
George Carlin's bit on climate change and everything is amazing.
Oh,
you remember? He's like,
yeah.
no, the Earth is fine. He says humans are fucked. The Earth is fine. It's like, maybe is it him who says like maybe the sole purpose of humans was just to create plastic so that we could just so that the Earth could just wipe us off the planet. He's like, because the Earth will gobble up that plastic in a matter of a few hundred, 1,000 years. It'll be a blip in the eye of the Earth's.
Well, it's also so anthropocentric, the idea that humans are like this horrific parasite.
They are, but at the same time,
yeah,
But you are a human. You're
Yeah.
not something else. You're not. Like if you don't want to preserve humanity and preserve yourself, then what the fuck are you doing? You can acknowledge like the parasitic element of humanity. That doesn't mean that you should want to be rid of it. What are you gonna be? Are you gonna turn into a lobster? What are you gonna do? You're stuck as a human right now. So
I also see a lot of younger people now using the reason they don't want to have kids as like, one, I don't want to bring them into this world, or I don't want to bring another fucking mouth breathing individual on the earth to fuck everything up. Like, what?
yeah. So
what are you talking about?
Now you're basically saying if someone said straight up, my kid's probably going to be really dumb, so I'm not going to have one. But you're basically saying my child has no potential to positively impact the
to be
Earth.
the next Tesla or someone who just breaks the fusion
I always
monster.
took issue with the idea that there's this limited amount of resources and that it's irresponsible to have more than one child. There's a lot of people who think it's irresponsible to have more than one child. And like, there's irresponsibility in everything. There's irresponsibility in having 10 children. There's irresponsibility in having no children. It doesn't, like, it's all very case dependent. But,
that kind of conversation is always over some fucking cocktail or coffee or, it's always over something completely useless. It's never, no one's ever saying that while they're like building a house for the homeless.
Yeah, like removing plastic from the ocean.
And that it's pretty myopic, because that one, we don't know how the mystery of how life and how people impact the world or impact other people, because the quote irresponsible mother who then births, or parents who birth 12 kids, one of those kids ends up being a Tesla or
Dolly
or an
Parton.
Einstein or
but
someone
also,
who touches
also,
the world.
I didn't like to presume that you have any real idea of where humanity, the universe, the Earth should go. Is fucking idiotic. You should have ideas about where you should go.
Yeah.
And then expand that perhaps to where your family should go, and then community, like it can branch out from that. But like it's actually such an egotistical, like maniacal idea to have these pronouncements about things.
Right. But it's also, without getting into the moral thing, it's stupid, because if you believe that your concern for the Earth's well-being is valid, well, there are billions of people who are not thinking about that. They are reproducing as quickly as possible. So shouldn't your role be to reproduce and create more people like you? If you think it's an indication that you basically think you're invalid, which may be the case. That's fine. But at least be upfront about it. Like, I'm dumb. My kids are gonna be dumb. I'll just stop it right now. That would be a very honest thing, and kind of funny.
Yeah. There's a podcast I was listening to. I think it comes from this. A lot of discussions actually about every issue come from this place that you don't want to be. Most people don't want to be embarrassed by their ideas, or embarrassed that they may be wrong, or that if they thought something that happened to be wrong and people thought that was stupid. Like that's the impulse that's coming from belief. I think it's the belief in religion. Often, like people fear an afterlife, though they might go to hell, so that's maybe they're going to be religious. But then a lot of this materialist reductionist science is also based on that. There was a podcast with Sam Harris, and he and his wife were talking to this person who his theory of the universe was that consciousness was the base layer, and that not material and atoms were the base layer, that atoms didn't just randomly come together and create the conscious experience, that consciousness of some order was the fundamental building block of life and the universe, and that it was the fundamental building block of atoms. And the way they were talking about it, they were so afraid of giving any credence to the idea, they had to preface everything they were saying with, I mean, let me just say that this is a crazy idea, but it's most likely, it's actually it sounds a little insane, but let's just unpack that and let's talk about it. And it's like, how the fuck do you even know anything? And like, why not just speak about it with a totally open mind?
Because it's a reflection of academia, and if they are saying things, they have to keep up the facade of rationality in the face of people who are going to dismiss them. So they have to say, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these fucking crazies over here.
Dude, I know that Sam Harris is a broader person than clips give him significance and that. He's very thoughtful. So I've thought about what I'm about to say a lot. Like, I wish he would just shut the fuck up. I'm done with him. He's really boring. Like, he and Neil deGrasse Tyson could just go have a fucking mental masturbation fest like in a cold, dark room somewhere. Like, it's... I'm obviously fucking going over the top to make a point here, but I don't know. I just think I've seen too many clips of him having these infantile discussions about, like, where's God? Is he behind the moon? And it's like, dude, come on. We can't have these infantile discussions anymore.
He strikes me as a massive the reason he's stimulating and the reason he kind of grates you is because he's a massive contradiction. He promotes meditation and practices meditation, and he's obviously interested in all sorts of ideas related to consciousness and investigating his own mind and all that kind of stuff. And then he still has the need to uphold the other side, which is like this front-facing, quote, rational side. I think it's highly irrational. I don't think it's just an improper place for rationality to exist. So he's such a contradiction, and that's what's grating about it. Well,
also the idea of rationalization or like ratios to be able to quantify something implies that you have all the parts of the fraction to rationalize. And I think that's where you have to, as a concept, see that the downfall of rationality as an completely encompassing philosophy. I'm not arguing against rationality. It serves its purpose. If I want to drive somewhere, I need the rational understanding of speed, physics, and that sort of thing. But it's one tiny slither of what reality could perhaps be. So now to try to apply the ideas of rationality with not all parts of the equation that you don't have all the parts to be able to form the equation correctly. So it has to reach its end, our rationality. Perhaps there is greater rationality of a being or a consciousness beyond us that has more parts of the puzzle and can approach basically describing things rationally in a more complete way. But right now, we're like people that understand 3 parts of the color spectrum, saying like everything's red, green, or blue.
That's what was so interesting about this particular take, is that we all have the same thing in us, that we don't want to seem stupid, we don't want to look stupid, we don't want to see ourselves, or we don't want to be seen as subscribing to an idea that might be wrong. But in that realm where they accept that they don't know what consciousness is. Mm-hmm. Like they know that there is consciousness, like what he would always say is that we know that there is consciousness because whatever it may be, whether it's a simulation or it's a God or this or that, or an energy field. We're experiencing something. So we know that consciousness exists, but they don't know what it is. So it's in this really, really mysterious realm. It's not like a very
Flat earther talking to a person who believes the earth is round saying, well, don't get me wrong, I think it's crazy, but the earth might be flat.
Yeah.
They're treating it like that.
Yeah.
They're
or something very, very empirical. You're seeing it. You can you can test it, and you can see the results of your test.
Yeah.
They're embarrassed to have a wrong idea about something absolutely mysterious.
that no one has a right idea about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw this comedian the other day that it was kind of like a bit of a silly point, but his point of why he thinks science is dumb, this was his whole bit, is he's like, science is dumb. He just says it. But his thing was like, literally every scientist, with the exception of like Newton, there's like one or two where their ideas have lasted 500 years. Mm-hmm. It's like, they're all wrong. Everyone ends up being wrong, So
yeah, but
I'm not saying I disagree with his point, but
it's good. Like, yeah, it's probably funny, whatever. But it's basically a silly idea. But it's a starting point. And
right.
There's that Kuhn, Kuhn. I can't remember his first name. He wrote Structure of Scientific Revolutions, and it's about that idea, and it's about, well, if the paradigm shifts, was the work done in a previous paradigm not science?
Right.
And his whole point was that it is an ongoing process. It's not a static thing, that the paradigm needs to be created and it needs to be ended. And both of them serve their purposes. And the acceptance of a new paradigm allows you to get into the specificity of the axiomatic basis of that paradigm. But eventually that runs into something new that has to do away with that previous paradigm. So that strikes me as a cyclical nature of the pursuit of knowledge, and it doesn't invalidate science. It just means that it's not this fixed thing.
Right.
Yeah, which is often lost basically on dogmatic religious science people, religiously scientific.
Yeah, well,
people.
he was he was a scientist, but a philosopher of science.
Yeah, that's why I find it super interesting that all the names that have kind of stood the test of time in science over the last 150 years are all. Some of them were actually deeply religious, or if not, they were really interested in like Vedic ideas and Hindu ideas. They were, especially the quantum physicists. Like, there's not a single one of them that doesn't have a quote that is referencing the Vedas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
well, I
and-
forget who I was listening to a podcast the other day of someone that was talking about the idea of science and rational thought, and he kept saying, like, and this. It was 500 years ago. Before that, we didn't have that. It's just like he was a significant figure. I can't remember what the podcast I was listening to. Like, not someone you'd expect to make that kind of a dumb statement.
Yeah. I mean, it is a mix, though. Like, people will point out like how ridiculous some of the Greek medical ideas were. Like hysteria being this wandering womb, or the humors being the basis of all the medicine, and that's some of it's quite crazy, quite insane. But it's like, I don't view that as negative. I view the fact that they got anything right, with what they were given, as so amazing.
Yeah, that's when the Indians thousands of years ago knew that hemispheres of the brain controlled opposite sides of the body, or at least somewhat in the nervous system. They knew an incredible amount that you couldn't necessarily just cut open a body and study it like Da Vinci did and see that. Like, you'd have to know, it would have to be some other form of observation that they were using to have that knowledge, which is just wild to think about. And then on the same side, you have up until 20 or 30, maybe a little longer, 30 years ago, modern scientists thought that the appendix was a vestigial organ.
Right.
It's like, they just thought that this organ was sitting in here doing fucking nothing.
Well, this comes back around to our original discussion about time. I don't actually think time's got to do with it, because I'm not pretending like the ancients knew everything. The ancients were probably a lot like us. Basically dumb, with a couple people that were transcendent beings out of them. So I don't think it has to do with time. I think that the real understanding, and it can be scientific in nature, that is that there's methodology to it, occurs on a different timeline. Let's use that word for people.
But it seems to
you know?
also not just be on one timeline. It goes in waves because
Yeah.
there's the Renaissance, there's the Dark Ages. I mean, if you think about it as from an individual state, we individually go through stages of darkness and light, of even understanding. Like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of deeply feeling like you understand an idea, even like sometimes in music theory or whatever it may be. Like, I feel like, oh, I actually understand that. And then a few months or a few years later, I can't wrap my brain around it. And so that's a wave of understanding on a deep level that is shifting, and it feels like the whole society or whole of humanity goes through that too.
And there's multiple waves in different areas, because so much of what they talk about the Dark Ages was like, it was a European Dark Ages, because the rest of the world wasn't necessarily in the same Dark Age of that wave. And we talked about this the other day, like Paul McCartney, I think some of his songs, he was hitting some next levels of consciousness in the 60s, and now he seems to have lost the plot a little bit, so it doesn't negate that, it is up and down, and it's unrelated. So this kind of carries on from that. Someone in the chat says this should definitely be deep thoughts and not the news.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't call it deep thoughts.
Shallow fried thoughts.
Yeah, so churches are struggling to keep people on board because obviously, like, they're outdated, all the obvious things. But I just
They
thought
tried playing alternative rock.
this is what I thought was funny about this, and I
They
don't
tried
need
not
to make fun of
molesting
these
people.
But some of these people seem to be genuinely trying to get back to the roots of what the church might have meant for people. And that, like, there's people here getting into organic farming, and that's part of their worship ceremony, is like, having basically a day on the farm sort of thing. So some really good ideas. Raising chickens. This guy, I just thought some of these pictures were funny because they're getting now into doing a lot of like yoga, basically, where, there was that period in the 90s when yoga first started becoming popular in America, where there were a lot of Christian churches that were like, no, this is like the demons stuff. So there were some that they wouldn't even allow to
call them yoga. They're like, no, you can't call this yoga. We're going to be stretching.
Yeah. And then, you've got people, and it's actually great, because if you go back far enough or deep enough into any great tradition, they all arrive at the same point. So they're getting back to talking about the human breath is connecting to the divine breath. And they're getting back to all the same ideas that yoga, that Hinduism, that the Vedas talk about, that Christianity at its absolute core is talking about. So it's actually a positive thing, I think, that these people that are realizing the current incarnations of Christianity are dead, effectively. They've turned into something the opposite of what they might have begun as.
It's just, I view any kind of, it's the way that Sam Harris thinks he fucking invented meditation. People do it all the time. It'll be, hey, have you heard of forgiveness? We should try that.
Yeah.
I don't know why no one suggested this before.
Well, that's why Christ was such a
cunt. Oh,
that's why he was such a revolutionary, or at least whatever he was, or the ideas were at the time, such a revolutionary idea. We can't think about it in these terms, but like the idea of turning the other cheek in a time where that was like pussy. It was an eye for an eye. It was literally
any time, though.
Yeah, it was such a brutal. I watched the new seasons of Vikings, and it's pretty bad, but it's entertaining enough to watch. And Jesus, the brutality of people. I mean, it's no different really now. We're dropping bombs on hundreds of thousands of people, but the up closeness of it all. And so, like, having an idea which we now take for granted, which is turn the other cheek, or have an internal objectivity or impartiality to someone being violent against you because of their nature, and it's not some malicious thing. Like, that's actually a revolutionary idea that was now taken for granted 2,000 years later.
It is, I think, the kind of non-philosophical way I've understood that kind of idea, or holy indifference, or all that kind of stuff, is like interacting with Juna or dogs, because for some reason you just accept who they are and what they are, mostly. Sometimes I get upset with Willow, but not really. It doesn't last very long. Yeah. And then with Juna or with nieces and stuff like that, you basically recognize the child in them, and then that, I guess, through the teenage years or something, that slowly goes away, and you start to forget that people are children or were children.
I think really what it is that you're unable to forgive things in people that you haven't addressed in yourself. And as a child grows up, it accumulates more
similarity to you
and all the bad things that you've done. I don't mean that everything you teach a child is bad, but we do end up just being this collection of basically things that annoy us about ourselves. So to forgive someone, which obviously is a complicated discussion, longer than we could ever figure out on this podcast or even two of them, but is
partially to forgive yourself.
Partially to forgive yourself, which means you have to identify, observe the things in yourself that you would not forgive if it was in another person. And so the people that have really talked about the idea of non-violence and or forgiveness, and that it is such a radical idea, not even in the sense, I know what you're saying, like that life was brutal back then, that to rise above that, but even in a deeper sense, to be non-violent. And that's why Martin Luther King, I think, is underrated because so much of what people focus on is like the external application, which obviously is 100% valid, of civil rights and that sort of thing. But he also was talking at such a profound level, I think, about forgiveness and about non-violence.
Yeah,
it's glossed over.
The propaganda that like all great people are propagandized against. Like the CIA probably killed him, and the CIA was like all the infidelity stuff and womanizer stuff and all that stuff, which may or may not have been true. But it's like, oh, does that invalidate everything the guy did? And that's what they were trying to do at the time, which was trying to just completely invalidate him.
And then they said, oh, the PR campaign didn't work. Let's just fucking shoot him.
Yeah. That's why I like Bob Marley too. I was listening to a few of his interviews too.
Why is him used to be a baby? Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I think so, but that is not the one. The interviewer says, "Are you rich? What do you mean by rich?" And he goes, "Do you make a lot of money?" He's like, "What do you mean by a lot of money?" And he just keeps pushing back. He says, the interview, if anyone else was doing it, it'd be like, okay, come on, just answer the question. But then it made me think, like, there's no way he died of toe cancer. Like that guy was definitely killed.
Dude, the most dangerous thing you can be to a structure that thrives on violence is non-violent.
Yeah.
To be a person that can convince millions of other people to try examine themselves and to act non-violently and in a forgiving way is terrifically threatening to a structure that is based on revenge in some form or another. So yeah, if you don't, that's why I personally have not gotten too good at meditating or being nonviolent. I don't want to be assassinated.
Well, the idea of loving yourself has kind of just been diluted now, where it's all just an Instagram pose, of whatever negative aspects of someone's like human qualities they have, you have to love that. And like, I think it's such a backwards idea, and it's been diluted for probably its real meaning. But there's the phrase from someone like, if you want to practice love on animals first.
Yeah.
And that is like, we've got this new cat now that I swore like we weren't going to keep. Amber and her sister were driving down the 290 and saw the eyes light up of this tiny kitten that was like one eye closed from an infection and just sitting literally right on the side of the highway. And so they took it in and gave it antibiotics and got it healed. And I was like, we can't keep this because it's too much trouble. Now he's part of the family. But anyway, with something that is so innately like it has no,
It's innocent.
It's innocent. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It's completely innocent. And when it annoys you, that's such a weird feeling when you get annoyed with something that is not doing anything to harm you or not doing anything maliciously.
You have to, I'd say that beginning with animals is even an overstep, because begin with like a cabinet that you bump your head into. You get angry with an inanimate object.
Yeah.
That's how violent we are in our nature, is that a rock can make us angry.
Yeah, but it's I don't know if everyone has the same experience, because I've had this conversation with people before where trying to define the word love and basically saying that love is beyond our current state of being, or at least the real type of love that most people are talking about. You know, you love, just like that comedian says, you love hot dogs, or, you know, hot dogs are awesome. He's using the word awesome and saying awesome is this thing to describe actually being in awe. And, oh, we went to the moon, it was awesome. Oh, you mean like a hot dog? And love is that for these people. It's just one word to describe all the full spectrum of liking, somewhat being satisfied with, loving, being in love, lustful. And when an animal is like this little innocent thing, and this guy, his name is Bonsai, he's a terror sometimes, and he's running around, and he's jumping at you, and he hasn't learned to, you know, use his claws less, and sometimes after an hour you're just like, this is fucking annoying, and you react in an annoyed way. And that shows how far away we are from being actually able to love another being, because in an instant we can just mechanically react with hate. Like you can hate in a moment like that.
People often do differentiate love, like that they understand that there are gradations of it, and then they use the term unconditional love, which I think is often misused, because they'll say unconditional love in the sense that, like, they use it with, like, you know, my wife, like, she can be totally full of shit, but I still love her. Like, that's what unconditional love. But I think if you take the word unconditional a little deeper, like linguistically, you arrive maybe more at the idea that the love itself is unconditioned. It has no opposites. It's like of a transcendent state, because most love that people feel can turn into its opposite. And to me, that means that it's probably not love of the highest order. And, you know, it's not that, I think there is a scale to it, because, you know, there are positives to, like, lower forms of love, but it is what every philosopher, every human has strived for, is some deeper understanding of what that could be. Is there something that cannot be turned to its opposite, that emotion? And that's what my song "As We Are" is about, really, guys. Yeah, anyone got anything were you going to say something, or go to another news story?
I think for me the ambition would not be to kind of repress frustration of that sort, because I think it's just animalistic and is actually a useful way of communicating with people and animals. But it's when it has too much inertia,
it's when you identify with it too much,
and if you, like, you know, because sometimes I say to Willow, "Shut the fuck up, Willow." I'm, you know, in the middle of something, but I don't really mean it. It's just a natural reaction, and it doesn't continue. And I'm not like, God, I'm so mad she was barking. Yeah. You know, but it'd be weird if I said, I shouldn't say anything mean to her.
But do you remember that neighbor we always made fun of in Phoenix? We walk around, like, literally heard them say, "My dog's an asshole." And they were so angry at their dog because the dog was a bad dog, because they were fucking terrible people who didn't train their dog properly. But they would mope. And they'd be on a walk, and you'd bump into them, and they'd, like, apologize for the dog. Like, "I'm sorry, my dog's barking at your dog. He's such an asshole." You're like, how can you possibly have that
thought? But for some reason, there's a certain time when it gets really funny, when parents talk about their children being little pieces of shit. Sometimes it's pretty funny and true, you know.
Well, yeah, because they are pieces of shit sometimes. I've been one. So there's a real quick story. I guess robots, which are taking over the world, have a hard time sewing. It's the one of the few industries where they still haven't gotten it, because it's, you know, you got multiple softness, floppiness of fabric. It's very hard to design a robot to do sewing. And there's some American companies are, out of the goodness of their heart, you know, trying to get rid of sweatshops around the world, trying to automate it, which it might end up having a net positive effect. I don't know, but it's an issue, apparently. I never thought about that. Like, you just assumed all this shitty clothing, like this stuff that I got printed probably, you know, for $4 somewhere, was like a robot involved, and it's not. It's still humans doing a huge portion of clothing design. And it's terrible. Like, the clothes I've got, like these cheaply printed things, it's terrible basically on every front in terms of where the resources go, the human suffering that goes involved in it all. So, you know, there are people pushing for, in fact, your sister-in-law is is on a kind of a cool movement, I think, with basically
Yeah.
you just buy old clothes. She goes and finds old
Yeah,
clothes,
she's-
resells vintage clothing. It's like
She's posted some statistics sometimes. If anyone's listening, it's her company's called Keep Earth Vintage, and you can check it out. Sells only like recycled or upcycled clothes and stuff. Some of the statistics are insane. The amount of clothes that go into dumps, or the amount of clothes that Americans throw away every year. It's like it's worse than food, and it's insane. Most of it nowadays is also this like polyester. It's all plastic.
Patagonia is a pretty interesting company from that standpoint, but the problem is you just have to look like a thermos your whole life.
Yeah,
like-
he's a pretty interesting
He's
dude.
super interesting,
yeah,
yeah.
there's a few companies like that are they seem like they still have a soul at the heart of the business. It's hard to tell with the amount of media campaigns. Like sometimes when something takes off too much in the media.
No, he seems legit.
Yeah, he does. I guess I'm always just a tiny bit cynical or.
Well, what did Steven say? A friend of mine yesterday at the lunch. You know, we were talking about he was talking about Rasputin or someone like that, and we were talking about charlatans. And I said, yeah, you know, I can't dismiss someone just because they have charlatan type qualities. And he goes, of course, yeah. I mean, the only reason you recognize them is because you have one in you. You know, the charlatan in me. I thought there should be a word like namaste. The light in me recognizes the light in you.
Yeah.
But it should be for the charlatan in me. Recognizes the charlatan in you.
Cool.
it's like sup, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting concept because like sometimes your bullshit meter goes off like that, and it's like why would it do that? It's because you're recognizing like resonance. Like if you sing,
I've done that trick before. You know,
I was sitting under a guitar speaking this morning, and every time I hit a certain note in my voice, the guitar above me would go boom, boom, a string would ring.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the idea of, or the way I think about it is if you recognize something in someone, it's probably because there's an element of it in you that's actually resonating. So you're resonating with the bullshit meter.
check this out. People are getting sued over their Bored Apes.
NFT scheme.
Yeah.
Oh God.
What is the scheme?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some of them were actually real Ponzi schemes, and then there's also like to sue someone for telling you to buy something.
I like how
that you
they're
didn't do
living
your
up to
own
the name, though,
research on it is-
non-fungible token. That can't be funged into anything now.
All right, what else have I got here on the news? Let's see. Oh, dude, this is pretty fucking funny. So everyone's been posting those AI pictures of themselves, you know, the ones where it makes you look like a fucking, you know, Greek god. This is TMZ. Take it from whence it comes, but I believe it 100%. People are going to their plastic surgeons with their AI things saying, do this. Like, fix me. I want to look like my picture. What's it? Lensa AI. It was that AI. You've seen them, right?
I've seen, yeah. I mean, I haven't used it, but I've seen everyone's, you know.
So there's people going around trying to get their faces to look exactly like those things.
Cool.
So check this. I don't know if anyone's seen this guy on TikTok. His name's Papa Swolio. He does all these videos that are like, the first one was probably mildly funny. He's a workout guy saying, here, you'll see it.
Good fucking morning. It's time to go to the gym, isn't it? Get off your ass and go now.
Okay, so he became super popular doing videos like that. Here's another one.
What the fuck are you doing awake? Do you know what time it is? How are you gonna make gains if you don't get sleep? Put the fucking phone down. Stop scrolling all night long. Like this video, drop a comment down below, and then get the fuck off your phone.
Okay, so he's obviously self-aware, but what is better than him is the people that have been doing stitches or duets with him on TikTok. So watch this.
Go to sleep right now. Go to fucking sleep. Turn this phone off. I am coming. Go to sleep right now. Go to fuck.
So as much as we talk shit about social media and TikTok and that, people are finding some fucking clever, funny things to do. Here's one.
Go to the fucking gym.
You go to the fucking gym.
Go to the fucking gym.
I don't want to go to the fucking gym.
Go to the fucking gym.
You fucking like it so much you
I
go.
And then last one here.
Eating right now probably shouldn't go in your face hole.
Which hole should it go in?
It's 2022. It's your call. Listen, did you know?
That we've never actually seen you in a gym? Now you do.
Whatever.
So I just thought that dude's funny, and the people making jokes about him are funny too. Let's talk about music that we picked this week. I'll go first. I picked, since it's coming up to Christmas time and most Christmas music sucks, there's an album by the Judds. I forget what it's called.
Can you just put on comments as well?
Oh,
I wanna
sorry.
be able to see the.
So there's an album. I think it's just called the Christmas album, or White Christmas, maybe, by the Judds. Naomi Judd, Ashley Judd's elder sisters, and I think Mom was in it. And it's the best Christmas album.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some classics like Nat King Cole and Bing Crosby, like the original ones that are still cool. But this is a really cool modern-ish Christmas album. And I was thinking about this because we've been playing Christmas music to my daughter and like getting into the Christmas spirit. And it's totally different when you have a kid because how happy they are when they see Christmas lights and Christmas trees.
Yeah.
Like take some of the cynicism out of you. But... And someone actually just brought up on the chat right now, please God, no Mariah Carey. When you hear the Mariah Carey Christmas album, like everyone, it's like one of the biggest albums of all time, and people think of Christmas. And I had this thought that when I hear it, I think of Christmas. When I hear this Judds album or the Nat King Cole, you feel Christmas. There's something that I don't think anyone's ever made a good Christmas album since some of these classics. To me, the Judds
Blue
did.
Christmas, Elvis, that's a good track.
Yeah, but I'm saying like that's how old is that? 60 years old.
Yeah.
There's modern bands that they've done cool versions, but to write a Christmas song, it seems like the ultimate challenge.
Yeah, I think it requires a lot of sweaters and eggnog or something like that. I don't know.
Mom and Dad wrote one.
Yeah, they've
yeah.
got one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. They haven't.
If they're watching, we should say Mom wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's saying here they love the Paul McCartney Christmas song on the chat. Isn't that
I think it's John Lennon.
not good? The Paul McCartney
I don't
one.
know that. I like the War is Over. It's not it's Christmas. It's not really a Christmas song, but
Paul Simon's got one called Getting Ready for Christmas Day that almost, I think, made it, but not quite for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like War is Over. It's a great song, but I agree with Danny. It's not quite Christmassy, even though it's about Christmas.
yeah, I like Dean Martin for Christmas stuff. But I just don't really like Christmas music in general.
No,
No.
because you have taste. All right, so the lyric I picked is from a song by Bob Dylan. It is called If You See Her, Say Hello. And there's like two versions I've heard of this. The one from the bootlegs that I don't think was ever officially released is the one I prefer. And here's the lyric. I see a lot of people as I make the rounds, and I hear her name here and there as I go from town to town. And I've never gotten used to it. I've just learned to turn it off. Either I'm too sensitive or else I'm getting soft. Mm-hmm. I like that last line. Either I'm too sensitive or else I'm getting soft. It's just a good line. Yeah. And this song is like basically kind of like a sad love song. But then that little line that comes in, I don't know where this is in his era, but it starts to like hint at where some of his later lyrics went with the kind of perfect paradox / show the opposites, not sarcastic, but like just pointing at that. So I've always liked that song. It's a great song.
That's
I like
probably my
a lot of
favorite
it.
song.
I don't like
one of my favorite songs of his.
Probably in Tangiers or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
A couple.
She might be in Tangiers. Yeah.
Something. There's a couple like pretentious. I like the song a lot, but there's a couple pretentious lines in it. I think. Yeah.
Maybe that's. Well, I guess that's in the original. But this is not in the main version that's out. I had to look for the alternative version that was out. All right, so that's my songs, Dylan.
For the song I did, Sturgill Simpson, Life of Sin. I'm finally on your playlists now, so I've been listening to all the country playlists, and basically all the other playlists that I've been missing out on for the past few months. I've finally gotten back to listening to some music. And yeah, just trying to find some good country out there because the stuff in mainstream is fucking pathetic. It's like I don't get more angry than when I listen to the bad country music. But it also makes me feel good. There's like a rage that it makes me feel that I like.
They're rage baiting.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
that new trend now. Just like make the most rage-worthy thing for the clicks.
But yeah, Sturgill Simpson is some pretty cool stuff. I forgot what album this is from, but a Life of Sin. Listen to it. It's just kind of old traditional country with really good players. Mm-hmm. He's got what sounds like a very genuine accent. It doesn't drive like it's not super pandering. And then for the lyric I did Billy Joel, She's Always a Woman. Not a huge fan of Billy Joel, but he has like a handful of songs which are really good. And I think this is one of them. Sometimes his production is always for me a little bit outdated or kind of cheesy or soft or something. But the lyric is, oh, she takes care of herself. She can wait if she wants. She's ahead of her time. Oh, she never gives out and she never gives in. She just changes her mind. And she'll promise you more than the Garden of Eden. Then she'll carelessly cut you and laugh while you're bleeding. But she'll bring out the best and the worst you can be. Blame it all on yourself because she's always a woman to me.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you on Billy Joel. It's
Vienna,
not really
that's a
my thing.
really good song.
He's got a lullaby.
Vienna.
I don't know if I've heard that.
He's got a
crazy child, so ambitious for a juvenile. You know.
I mean, our parents saw him because we had a friend in Phoenix that was friends with him. She was a local singer, and she knew him from way back in the day. So he came to town to do a private gig for like a bank and got paid $1 million, literally. to do that gig back in the 90s or early 2000s. And then afterwards, my parents, or our parents, went out to a hotel or something with like the after party, and he was there, and he was the piano man. Right. Played songs for like 2 hours, and they said it was one of the coolest things ever, and that he was fucking incredible, performer, piano player, and everything. So yeah, it's not that I don't respect him or think he's good. It's just not crazy about the music.
The Fire. That's a weird record for him to have made. Kind of cool.
What's your songs?
Gotta say the Debbie Cousins Christmas songs are damn good. That's cool. Is Evie from Arizona?
I don't think so. I think Evie is one
English
of the English.
Yeah.
I know the English people on our Discord.
Yeah. What are my songs? I got Pretend I Never Happened by Waylon Jennings. I just like Waylon Jennings. I like the drums always in his records, and the sound of them. I just like the sound of that record a lot. It's just a kind of hypnotic groove, and he's got like this. What would he be? He's like, someone would probably call him like a sad fuck boy or something like that. I don't know. He's got the right kind of sadness. Him and Willie, they got the right kind of sadness. And George Jones, he's got that kind of like, almost like one of the Seven Dwarves sadness, or like Elmer Fudd about, he's a crying cartoon character. Anyway, country sadness is very appealing to me.
There's a new documentary TV show on Showtime about George Jones with, what's his name? Michael Shannon, who's a fucking awesome actor. Right. So it might be good.
Yeah, I heard that was good, yeah. I like the idea of cowboys crying. I think it's funny. What have I got here? Revelry, Kings of Leon. The opening line is, "What a night for a dance. I'm a dancing machine." I don't know. It's a great opening line.
Especially because having met them and seen from backstage and observed their vibe. They're not. That's not the kind of thing you expect them to say. So it's just funny.
Yeah, it's just I think he's underrated as a songwriter, lyricist.
He means he dances like a machine.
Yeah. It's just, especially in that accent and that delivery, and with the melody, because it's got a kind of poignancy and pathos. That whole song has got a ton of pathos in it. So it's just I like lyrics that somewhat contradict or feel slightly wrong or something,
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for the podcast this week. If you haven't already, go stream Big Life, which is a song by Jane Leo that we did a remix of. Really like how it turned out. I said this to Daniel from Jane Leo, who was on the podcast last week, that sometimes you're reluctant to share some of our remixes or like some of the stuff we do as side work because it's not quite what we would attach ourselves to. But this one, I actually really like how it turned out.
Yeah.
And I like the original, but I like what we did with it,
Yeah.
So go check that out if you haven't already. Stream it everywhere that streaming exists. And I think we might do another song with them at some point in the future. Yeah, that's the podcast for this week. Goodbye, everybody.